Do you think algorithms are helping or hurting the art community? Hey, welcome back. I know it's been a little while, but here I am back with another video, and I just wanted to have a little chat about social media and specifically the algorithms and how that has been affecting the art community, and also briefly touch on AI and how that has affected the community. So, yes. Cat. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, if you're an artist, you probably know what I'm gonna be talking about because you have experienced it. Or if you're just a social media user, any kind of creator, you would know that there have been quite some significant changes since, the beginning of social media to where it is now. Everything is marketable, everything is monetized, everyone is trying to make a buck. Don't fault anyone for that, that's totally understandable. I'm trying to do the same thing. What I do have a problem with is the companies that have been offering monetization but then have found ways to either not pay you at all or pay you less, or they have their own monopoly over their brand and their ability to offer monetization to creators, so they can really make whatever decisions they want and put whatever prices, and there is no one set standard for any of this. Everything is arbitrary, everything is made up, and the company that owns the social media that you are using to advertise for your art or anything, they have full say in what happens, and ultimately you can't really do much about it except deal with it. So that kind of goes into the whole algorithm thing. So when social media first started, we didn't really have algorithms. Everything was chronological. Everything showed up on your feed as newest to oldest. So the more you scroll, the older content you see, the newer stuff is always on top. In the last 5, 7, 10-ish years, they have changed that, and pretty much every one of them is like this, where it's not chronological anymore. It's based off of what the algorithm thinks you will want to see, / what is getting more attention, what's more popular, and that stuff all gets pushed to the top. So the more interaction you get, the more views you get, the more comments you get, the more shares you get, all of that gets pushed to the very top of your feed. If you are a small creator or just starting out and you don't have a following, it is very hard to fight with that, because it kind of like works both ways, where the less interaction you have, the less then those social medias will push your post to then get seen, and then you get less interactions. That already is kind of problematic for the community, and I know many other artists have struggled with this. You really have to push through it and just keep posting and just keep grinding, keep hustling. Hustle culture also is kind of can be a part of this conversation too, but we can leave that for another video. Yeah, it's a lot of work that you initially have to put in, which on the one hand you could argue okay, that's fair, because all of the other bigger creators had to start somewhere, right? And they had to start from scratch too, which, while yes, that is true, when they started from scratch, it was a lot easier to get seen and to get pushed to the top, so to speak, than it is now. Now, if you have more interactions, you will just naturally get more traction. So it's kind of like the algorithm is really biased towards what is already popular versus towards smaller creators and people who are just trying to get their stuff seen, trying to get their stuff out there. So yeah, there's a lot that can be said about that. And now, recently, in the last year or so, the last few years, we've really brought AI into the picture. And that has kind of made it even worse, because now, not only are we fighting algorithms, we're also fighting literal fake art that is created by computers. The same computers that run these algorithms. So it's who are we making this art for now? You really need to ask yourself that question as an artist. Also, especially as an artist who's trying to sell their stuff and get their name out there. There's a lot of decisions you need to make in terms of creating your art. So you really need to know why you're making art. You really need to have a good grasp of the reason behind the art, because if you're doing it just to sell, you're gonna get burnt out really fast. And this kind of goes into like content creation and like YouTube, for example, too. But I'm talking specifically about like digital or physical art, just creating something out of nothing, essentially. And if you expect something to happen, you know, to blow up or whatever, to get really big within a certain amount of time, and that doesn't happen, you're gonna be really disappointed, you're gonna be really sad, and then you're gonna not want to do anything anymore. And I think every artist, whether or not, you know, they're making art for themselves or to sell or whatever, I think everybody has kind of struggled that to some extent. But artists who are specifically trying to make a living doing that get to experience that a lot more often. And that goes into like time management and knowing how much work you're able to put into something before you're, you know, out for the next few days. That can be hard also, especially knowing that many artists, they have to start somewhere. So we all have regular jobs outside of what we do, you know, which are basically a hobby, but also like more than a hobby. Because I mean, personally, like, yeah, it would be nice to just like make art all day and not have to go into, you know, a regular job. But that's unrealistic. And so yeah, many of us start with a part-time or a full-time job even somewhere else. And so you already have limited time to work on these things that you want to do, that you love. And all of these different factors together can combine into just hating it in the end, and not wanting to even make anything. It is a little different if you're an artist that it's just your hobby, you're just doing it for fun, you're not trying to sell anything, it's just for you. I feel like it's a little bit different, because then you don't have all of these expectations for like where your art is supposed to be, or where your brand is supposed to be, or your business or whatever. I feel like it's a little bit easier. At the same time, if you are somebody who's just doing this for your own, you know, for your own fun as a hobby, then most of these things aren't gonna concern you. You know, algorithms aren't gonna matter, social media changes aren't gonna matter. If you're just doing it for fun and strictly for fun, then it's, you know, all of this other stuff doesn't affect it as much. And technically it is easier to focus on what you love and do it if there aren't these extra stresses involved in these extra factors. But yeah, with the algorithms and how they have changed, I've seen many people talk about this. Many artists, many creators talk about this on, you know, Facebook or Instagram or YouTube even, and, you know, say how even those who had a following before, they have noticed a huge drop off. You probably also notice, if you're on Instagram, that you used to be able to see the like counts on every post, right? On every picture. And now a lot of people have it set to like private. You can private that number, and it just says, you know, this person and others liked this post, and you can't see the exact number. And I do kind of like that they added that, because that does take some of the pressure away from, I think, both the creator and the viewer. Because I think a lot of times, I don't know if this is really talked about, but I feel like if a post already has a lot of likes and comments and everything, other people are more likely to also share that or interact in that way. Then I feel like if a smaller post, a smaller page, when they post, they get less likes, and I feel like people are also less likely to interact with it. I kind of like, yeah, it like goes both ways. So it's kind of like the higher up you are, the better it is. The lower you are, the worse it is. But also, it kind of doesn't matter in a way, because everybody's affected. So this is what I was going to say earlier. It's like larger creators have also noticed that their posts don't get as much interaction as before. So this is hitting everybody. It's not just hitting the small creators. It's hitting all of the creators. I do think that it is easier for the larger ones to get traction. But then you have stuff like, you know, the laws of the social media, or the rules, rather, of the social media. And again, that can be arbitrary, and whatever they want to put in there, you know, terms and conditions. They can also like change that whenever. We have like no control essentially over these platforms that we're trying to use to build our brands. It all comes down to what they want to do. There's also something that you may have heard called shadow banned, being shadow banned, and that's another issue that a lot of creators are experiencing. And that also depends on the kind of content you make. If you make more risque type stuff, like if you're a sex worker, even like some like lewd cosplayers, like if you don't do like XXX stuff, cute, sexy pictures, whatever, that kind of stuff can still get flagged, and that can get you shadow banned, which is kind of also an arbitrary term because you will never be told when you're shadow banned. You will never get a notification when you're shadow banned. The only way that you can really know that you are is if you notice like a significant drop in the interaction that you're getting compared to like posts, a couple days ago, a couple weeks ago, whatever. And then actually Facebook has this thing where you can go into like your dashboard, especially if you have professional mode on. There's a dashboard you can go into and see if any of your posts were flagged. And sometimes there are posts in there that were flagged that they won't even tell you are flagged, and that will lower your reach. That can really make or break somebody's engagement and interaction, and essentially how much they're able to sell. And some businesses have given up. And it's sad, and it's disappointing. But in the end, there's only so much they can do. There's only so much the artists can do, the creators can do, the users of the platforms can do, because they don't run the platforms, they don't run the social medias, and especially when it comes to like Facebook and Instagram specifically, I have a lot of issues with, and yet again, that could be a whole other topic, a whole other video. But so we know that Facebook and Instagram are now owned by Meta, the same company. They used to be two different companies, but then Facebook bought both of them. And so now they work pretty similarly, and they both have monetization options, although they vary slightly. But for me, I've noticed that Facebook, it's a lot easier to grow than Instagram, and it kind of used to be the other way around. I feel like Instagram used to be where especially during like 2020, like during the plague times, it kind of makes sense because a lot of people were on their phones or on the internet because nobody had anything to do, so there was a lot more interaction going on there, a lot more pages growing, a lot more businesses starting, ironically enough. But then after all that, like a couple years after, it's 2024 now, it's only 4 years later, and so many of these platforms have added on all these different things, and nobody knows exactly how they work. And again, you can be shadow banned for essentially no reason. Sometimes, stuff that gets flagged that like doesn't break any rules whatsoever, it's again, back to the algorithm, it's because they have computers doing all the work. There's like no people who are sitting there, looking through all this, moderating anything. There's nobody actually watching what's going on. It's pretty much completely run by the algorithm. And if you try to go get help, try to contact anyone, you can't find any emails, you can't find any phone numbers, you go to the FAQ, and it just sends you down a river of other FAQs. And it's like impossible to actually get any help if there are any issues. I've seen creators have to deal with their accounts either taken down or, be in threat of being taken down. And again, whether that's because something got flagged by accident, or for example, a recent one that I saw is this creator, her name is Pinipy, Pinipy, and I saw her posting on Instagram talking about how her account is being threatened, and potentially could be taken down because somebody else issued DMCA claims to her content. They stole her content, posted it, and then tried to get her page taken down by telling Instagram that she's the one stealing content. It's like absurd stuff like this. And like if you get really unlucky, that could happen. You could get your whole page taken down. And that is also like devastating because, these people have been doing this for years, potentially even a decade or more. And all of a sudden to have, a decade's worth of work be threatened to completely disappear is terrifying. And the fact that does happen and has happened it makes it more realistic and even scarier, and it's like stuff like that if you do see a creator complaining about stuff like this, just let them just let them, because they have a right to it. They have a right to complain. They have a right to point out what's been going on and what makes it harder and harder. Because I have seen people who, will come on these posts when a creator, an artist, whatever, is complaining about being shadow banned, or the algorithm being bad. And granted, there are also a lot of people who don't really do anything and complain, but there are people who like put their heart and souls into this work. And I think it's a little ridiculous when somebody comes into the comments and starts saying like, well, you're just not working hard enough, or all these other excuses, and not actually like listening to what they're saying. If you're someone like that, please, if you don't like it, just read it and move on. If you really don't like it, delete the person, block the person, unfollow them, whatever. But let the creators complain about the algorithms, honestly, because there is plenty to complain about here, and there's plenty that could be improved. They could have a good environment, a thriving environment even for all of these different creators, but they don't do that. I was monetized on Facebook for a little bit too, and I turned it off because my stuff was just getting flagged. Random stuff, or stuff from like months ago, years ago even, all of a sudden was getting flagged. And then once that stuff is flagged, then you temporarily like lose monetization, even if it's not like, if it's your first strike or it's not anything bad, whatever, they like give you chances, right? They give you like 3 strikes type of thing, whatever. But like every time you get something flagged, like it gets, the punishment gets worse and worse, and then eventually like, yeah, you could lose monetization, you could lose your page. It just goes on, and you can't fight it. There's no human you can talk to. And this is another thing too, because the whole verification thing, right, that Facebook now has, Instagram has, Twitter has, they like started that or whatever. Theoretically, one of the advantages of having verification and paying for it, because you do have to pay for it, it's like what, $15 a month or something. And yeah, supposedly one of the perks is that you have access to like chat with a real person if you have any issues. But I have seen creators who are verified say that they can't reach anyone either. So it's like, what is the point? Like, how does this isn't sustainable. Like, I mean, a lot of creators have already bailed. They've said, this is too much, I can't deal with this. They would rather just go and work their regular day job or night job or whatever other job they have that isn't on the internet. They would rather do that than have to deal with the algorithms and AI on top of that. And the AI thing is pretty funny too, because I've seen posts where AI artists will complain about the same stuff that regular artists, that like, real artists are complaining about, which is, getting their content stolen, somebody not giving them credit, like, oh, like, how do I watermark my stuff without it getting stolen? And the funny thing about that is, you don't own that. If you're an AI artist, whatever you put into the program, you don't own that. So even if you do watermark it, whatever, like, you don't have a copyright to that. It's created by a computer, It is not something that you created by yourself from scratch. Now, it's a little different if you use the AI and make that into then your own art. Then that is yours. Then you can copyright that, you own the rights to that art. But if you just use AI, you just use a computer to make whatever image it is, you do not own the rights to that image. And it's funny when these people try to argue that they do and complain about other people using their work or whatever. Now, another fun story I saw about AI was this person on Reddit posted about how there was a job listing they saw for like a graphic design artist or something like that, and they decided to apply even though they didn't have any experience. They didn't go to school for that. They had no background in it. They decided to apply because they just figured, I could just use AI to do it for me. So somehow they got the job. I don't know how, but they got the job. And the reason they were posting on Reddit was because they were asking how to essentially fake being a graphic design artist by using AI, and like how they could manipulate it into whatever project they needed it to look like, And it would be funny too, because also, like, okay, like, if you didn't have graphic design skills, but you had, like, let's say Photoshop skills, I guess potentially you could manipulate the AI image into whatever you need it to look like, but that still takes a lot of effort and skill. If you're starting from scratch and you are expecting this, I mean, a lie, this big lie to work for you, it's funny. It's funny, it's a little sad. It is another reason why a lot of artists are angry about AI and how people are using it, how people are treating it. So yeah, that's an example. Obviously, I don't know how true that story is, but that, yeah, it was a post I saw where this person was asking for advice on how to lie to their bosses about the work that they cannot do. Another thing that we've been seeing a lot of is, I'm sure at this point, y'all have also seen these posts and these images, but every once in a while you're scrolling through your feed and you see this, like, really impressive, let's say, crochet post, crochet creation. And at first glance, you're like, whoa, that's really cool. And then, like, if you're kind of trained to know what to look for, you can spot it pretty much right away. But as soon as you look a little closer, you realize that that is an AI image. And so there's this one page that shares a lot of, like, big, like, crochet sculptures, basically. Like, it's, like, these big animals, like dogs and lions, and or a lot of them will have, like, this granny, you know, standing there, like, oh, granny crocheted the big lion for her granddaughter or whatever, like some crap like that. All of that is fake. Granny is AI. Granny doesn't exist. The lion doesn't exist. The couch even doesn't exist. None of those things exist. And then you will click on the comments and you will see all of these people being like, oh my god, that's so amazing, like, wow. Or they'll, like, tag their friends, be like, oh my god, make this for me. And every once in a while you'll see somebody be like, this is fake, this is AI, like, it doesn't exist. Or they'll be like, is there a pattern for this? Well, actually, scratch that. Most people wouldn't say that, because I think at this point most crochet artists would be able to recognize when something is AI. You could potentially use that and, like, create your own pattern or whatever, or find a similar one and try to make it a reality. But, like, some of that stuff too, it's like ginormous, like, human-sized, like, crochet sculptures. Imagining how long that would take to do in real life, that wouldn't cost like $100, $200, like, it would cost probably, like, at least $1,000, if not more, to make something of that size, of that caliber. And it's absurd reading those comments and how unaware, I guess, these people are of, like, how unrealistic that is. And then you see all this stuff, and these pages have so many views and so many, they have, like, you know, 10k followers, 20k followers, what, like 50, like, whatever, like a huge amount, because, you know, yeah, these images are pretty, whatever, they're cool to look at, but so many people are just kind of passively looking at it, and they don't realize the harm that it has on the community, not just for crochet artists in this case, but for artists everywhere, because there are also pages like this with other kinds of art, not just crochet stuff. That's an example I'm using because I'm also a crochet artist, and it's silly to me because, like I said, to me it's really easy to tell when a picture is fake because the stitches don't look right, you know, things don't match up. If you're curious about what to look for, I'm sure there are many posts about this online, so feel free to search that. But yeah, usually, like, something is just not quite right. It's unaligned, there aren't, like, straight, you know, clear lines, how there would be if a real artist did it. And especially with crochet, I think AI has a hard time replicating what the stitches actually look like, because if you take a picture of something that's crocheted, you will be able to see what stitches, like, I can look at something that's crocheted and know what kind of stitch they use and be able to potentially replicate that without even, like, looking at a pattern. But if you look at a crochet image that's AI made, you don't see any clear stitches. You can't tell what stitches were used, what patterns were used, you know, to make that. And yeah, it's because it's not real. And stuff like that is really harmful because, yeah, then all of a sudden these people, this general populace, have this expectation in their head of what they're supposed to be seeing. And now with, like, all of the, like, fast fashion brands and, like, you know, like Temu especially is the biggest one, everybody likes and wants to get everything for cheaper, which is fine because we're all broke and, like, I get it, but it's also like, don't expect that from somebody who is hand making something for you. whether that's custom made or pre-made. This was somebody sat down and spent multiple hours working on this thing, and who knows how many days and years learning how to do it. And then to bargain with them and ask them to sell it for cheaper is such a slap in the face. The only time you should expect to get a bargain or a deal is when they specifically say, hey, I'm having a sale, this is whatever, 20% off, 30% off, whatever. The same way regular stores do, right? They have sales too. But for some reason, there's this kind of almost unspoken thing where so much more is expected of real human artists than there is of like huge corporations and huge brands. And it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to process when you really start wondering how it all works. But I think it's important to know, both for artists and non-artists, people who aren't the ones doing it, but maybe the ones buying it, and then you can buy more responsibly. And I know we can't 100% put the blame and the responsibility on the consumer, and in fact we should be putting the blame and responsibility mostly on the corporations where it's coming from. But I think talking about things like this should be done a lot more, so that a lot more people are aware of this. And I think it's okay to expect that Shein top or that Temu top to be $5 or $10, but I don't think it's okay to expect that handmade crochet top to be $10. If something is handmade, it should be entirely on the artist to decide what the price is, and you as a consumer can either take it or not. Nobody's forcing you to buy from any of these artists, and if you don't like how much it costs, just don't buy it. Like, that's it. But I think it's a little silly when people go to like complain and to like argue with artists about how much they should be getting paid, because the artist knows how long it took to make this product. You don't know how long it took, so you don't know how much it's actually worth. And I think that is kind of like this two-faced thing, almost, like where there's so much fast fashion now, and all of these things are being sold for really cheap, even though if we look backstage behind what's happening there's a lot of illegal things going on, and child labor and whatnot. But it's in a way, it's okay to expect those things to be really cheap, but it is not okay to expect an artist's creation to be really cheap. It is a little bit different for social media, because there's no you can't really put like a monetary value on that. Almost like, again, I guess it all depends on the artist, but with all of these different social medias adding monetization to creators, there's still a lot that the creators can't control, and it all just comes down to the platforms, the companies, the big corporations, and the artists are very limited to how they can actually advertise their products. Yeah, obviously the internet is huge now, and there are opportunities that have never existed 10, 20, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, whatever. But at the same time, there are definitely cons that come with that, and I think it is more than okay and in fact necessary to talk about these things, because maybe then we can actually like improve it and like try to change it for the better. I say we, but again, we the consumers and creators are limited in what we can do. And that's kind of the other part of it too, is there are only so many social medias that exist that we can use, and we are beholden to how they work. We can't change how they work. And so, like, yeah, there's been a lot of talk about like other social medias, like smaller ones being made, but they have their own sets of problems that they're new, they don't have enough people working on it, they got a lot going on, and they're working as fast as they can, versus the problems with the big social medias like Facebook and Instagram is that they don't really have people. they are run by computers. At least that's what it seems like, because it's impossible to reach anybody for help. So yeah, this is kind of like there's a lot of like offshoots from this conversation that we can go to, but that's I think about what I wanted to talk about, and I really want to know your opinions and your experiences, whether you're an artist or a consumer, or let me know if there are things I talked about that you didn't know about before, you know, and I think it's important, whether you're a creator or not, to just be aware of how we as consumers are being treated, and what we are being given, and what appears to be the norm, and how then we use that to compare it to basically like specialty items that like you wouldn't need on like, you know, just like your normal daily routine, right? It's like something that you want to get. It's not something that you necessarily need. That's kind of the other thing that sucks about trying to make a living as an artist, is it can be argued, I guess, that nobody needs art to live, to survive, right? If you're like really struggling, you're not gonna be going out and buying art probably. Like, you're gonna be worried about like food and paying the bills and paying rent and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, the artists are kind of in the same spot where they're trying to make a living too, and like, we aren't able to work the same way that you would in a regular job. There's a lot more involvement in it than just like clocking in, going to your 9 to 5, whatever, clocking out, going home, doing whatever. It's kind of like you're always involved. You're always gonna be thinking of new things and new ways to create something, new ways to take pictures of it, or new ways to market it, or whatever. And you're kind of like always, as an artist and business owner, or like someone who's trying to do that, you're kind of always on the clock in a way. So that's another thing I think that most people don't think about, who don't do this kind of stuff. And yeah, there's a lot going on now, and it's gonna be interesting to see how it all evolves. But it's gotten harder in a lot of ways, to do the things that we were able to do 5-10 years ago. And there's also, just a little side note, there are a lot of pages now that are just like nothing. Like, there's a word for it, it's called rage bait, where they will just like post like nonsensical like garbage, and then people will get like mad or annoyed, and then like react and comment on the post, and then that'll get pushed up even more, and then you're also fighting with like that trash, literal like trash on the internet. And it's like, it's a lot. There's a lot you have to go through, a lot of hoops to jump through to get your stuff seen. And yeah, I think most people don't think about that. But that's why I think it's so valuable to have that handmade piece that someone, you know, spent their time making for you. And it'll also probably last a lot longer than that cheap $5 Shein thing, which is another thing that could go into like the environment and being eco-friendly, because, you know, all that stuff ends up in giant piles of landfills, because if it goes to the thrift store and it doesn't get sold, which a lot of times it doesn't. Anyway, off topic kind of, but not really. But yeah, that's about it. It's about all I wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Let me know your thoughts about all of it. And sorry I've been gone for a little while. Life is lifing, and there's things I gotta do, unfortunately, before I can fully come back. But you know, it'd be nice to do that again eventually, to do weekly videos, because that was cool. I was kind of on a roll for like about I don't know, like 2 years, maybe almost 3. But anyway, I'm gonna go. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please leave me a like. If you are new to my channel, I am an artist and I do all kinds of little things, and every once in a while I do these sit down chats and just record my thoughts on the community or whatever else is related, or whatever else I want to talk about. But yeah, I also dye my hair. About that, I don't know if you can see, but there's some lighter pieces here. I have been trying to bleach this out. This is the 3rd session, okay? So it's gonna take a while, but upcoming. We're working on that. We're doing some changes. But anyway, yeah, dye my hair. I do fashion videos. I paint, although I haven't made videos on here in a while. But anyway, I do a lot. Check out my channel if you like any of it, then hit subscribe, and hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.